Hey everyone, welcome to the Sports 2.0 show. I am your host, Akshay Kumbar. With me is the wonderful Jaya Williams and the amazing Grant Mitchell. Grant, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I appreciate the gas there. Calling me the amazing Grant Mitchell. That's better than what I've gotten so far. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm especially happy to be here with such a wonderful host.
Thank you. Jaya, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, It's a little rainy today, so I'm stuck in the house, but I'm ready to talk some basketball. How are you?
I am doing great. Just watched that Nets game last night. I'm super excited about New York sports right now. Islanders are doing okay right now in the Stanley Cup, and the Nets are obviously doing great. So we'll dive into the topics right now. First things first, breaking news right now. Clippers fear that Kawhi Leonard has actually torn his ACL. What does this mean for the Clippers and actually the West in general? We'll start with you, Jaya.
Well, obviously, nobody wants to hear about anyone getting injured, especially after all of the injuries we've seen throughout this playoff so far. It just seems to be a streak of bad luck again and again. But Leonard, he's a two-time NBA Finals MVP. He averages plus 30 points and 57% shooting in the playoffs. So them not having him, their star player, that's a huge deal, especially for tonight's game against the Jazz. I mean, it means everything whether or not Kawhi is there or not.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that this game is going to be pivotal for the series, and I think that without Kawhi, it not only kind of demoralizes the Clippers, but also gives the Jazz a little bit of a boost. Grant, how do you think the Clippers go from here in Game 5 and in the series if Kawhi is out with an ACL?
Yeah, so if Kawhi really has torn his ACL, we assumed he wasn't going to play tonight. They had speculated that he had sprained his knee, but if it is a torn ACL and he's out for the series, this is tragic for the Clippers. I mean, the Utah Jazz are not healthy themselves. Donovan Mitchell got banged up at the end of Game 3. Mike Conley hasn't even played yet so far. So this was the Clippers' chance to pounce, and to their credit, they did. They hopped on them during their two games at home. They won 2 games straight to tie it up at 2-2. Kawhi averaged 32.5 points and 9 rebounds in those games, and Paul George played really well too. But with Kawhi being out, now Paul George is all of a sudden that guy. And, there's the stigma, playoff P. He doesn't show up. He's averaging almost 25 points, shooting nearly 40% from three during these playoffs, so he's done well. But now he's going to have to be the number one guy. And we haven't seen him do that since Indiana. And in OKC, maybe he was 1A with Russell Westbrook, but even that, he wasn't good. So he's really going to have something to prove for himself and for his legacy if he is the number one option for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I think also it's just, the Clippers have been getting a lot of crap lately for not having a solid rotation earlier in the playoffs in the first place. So I think a lot of it's going to be what Ty Lue does and what adjustments and substitutions he's going to be able to make in this case.
right.
And,
Yeah.
and this hurts just to the average fan at home, because if you look at some of the names that have been injured during these playoffs, we have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. We're missing Jamal Murray. Donovan Mitchell missed the first game of the series. Kyrie Irving, James Harden, now Kawhi Leonard. It's almost reminiscent of last year. People were saying that it was a bubble ring and it didn't necessarily count because it wasn't the hardest competition. And I'm not trying to discredit the eventual champion of this year, but things are very different from what we expected them to look like heading into the playoffs.
Right. Yeah, and with all these injuries in these playoffs, we've seen a lot of role players step up here and there for their teams. Who on the Clippers, outside of Paul George, do you think will step up in Game 5? Grant, we'll go with you.
Well, one person, I don't necessarily know if I expect them to, but one person that I think could be key for them is Reggie Jackson. We saw when the Clippers were really down and out against the Mavericks, he was the one scoring 20 points a game to really keep the Clippers at least treading water in that series. And eventually Kawhi took over. Paul George chipped in the last few games. But Reggie Jackson really is going to have to become that 20-point per game scorer, which he really felt he could be. And that's why he left that Oklahoma City dynasty with Durant, Harden, and Westbrook and went to Detroit. He thought that he was that player. So he's really going to get his chance in the next few games at the highest stage to prove himself right.
Jaya, who do you have as your expected role player to step up for the Clippers?
I think Reggie Jackson is solid. I think a lot of pressure is going to be on all of the starting five, but I would say Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris too could go ahead and step into that role and do what they need to do. So it will just be interesting to see, honestly. What do you think, Akshay?
In my opinion, I think that Marcus Morris has to step up. He's obviously not played the best this series. He had a really tough game 1 and game 2. Had a decent game 3 and 4, but he needs to be more consistent and be able to knock down those threes when he's open. So I think that if he can step up here, the Clippers have a good shot at taking game 5.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and move on to the other side of the Western Conference with the Suns already sweeping the Nuggets in 4. Breaking news again yesterday into this morning, Chris Paul is out of the playoffs indefinitely due to health and safety protocols in the NBA. He tested positive for COVID-19 and he is vaccinated. What does this mean for the Suns if he isn't able to play in the Western Conference Finals? Jaya, we'll go with you first.
Again, this means everything. It just seems like these star players cannot catch a break this season. But, Chris Paul just last game, he dropped 37 points, a season high for him. And he is their greatest point guard. He's one of the top point guards in the league, but losing Paul, again, what is that going to mean for them to be able to score? Who's going to be who's going to replace Paul as their lead scorer? That would be my question.
Yeah, great. You have an answer for that?
Who can replace Chris Paul? Well, one thing that they do have going for them is that Chris Paul is vaccinated, and it is possible to give a false positive test. So I would expect him to be taking, as many as he can over the next couple of days and try to say, hey, this was some sort of mistake, try to get himself eligible for the Western Conference Finals. But if he cannot play, it hurts them tremendously. Cameron Payne will probably become the starting point guard, and he has performed very well since being picked up by Phoenix right before the start of the bubble last year. He's averaging over 10 points a game off the bench. He had a career high this season against the Lakers, and he also played very well against the Lakers in the opening round. But yeah, Jaya mentioned it. Chris Paul scored 37 points in the closeout game against Denver. That's the most that he's scored since the start of 2018. I believe it was in May. And you can't replace what he's done to the Phoenix Suns organization. They were the laughingstock of the league. They had the worst record for 3 or 4 years in a row. And now they're the second seed in the Western Conference, and they've already swept their way to the conference finals. So without Chris Paul, it's, obviously Utah is going to be down Mike Conley, or LA is going to be down Kawhi. So you could say it's fair, but his impact is above what anyone else has on their teams left in these playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that on point. Oh, sorry. You can go ahead, Jay.
I'm sorry. I was just adding that, the good news for the Suns is that since they've already confirmed their spot in those finals, they have the most time to figure this out, to make a game plan. So that's really their advantage. And I think what it comes down to is what the organization is going to do with these extra days that they have over all the other teams still trying to finish their game 6 and 7. So I think there is still hope for them if they can develop a good game plan.
Yeah, I definitely think, even if he can't play, I think that on court presence, even, with him on the sideline, I think that's going to take a big toll on this team. They're a very young, inexperienced team. They've never really made it this far in the playoffs before. And Chris Paul has, not only had that veteran experience, but has, kind of been like a spark plug at times for the Suns. So I definitely think it'll be a challenge, but if Chris Paul can play, I think it'll just, boost their confidence even more and, eventually help them try to make the NBA Finals.
And one thing about Chris Paul that we saw in Phoenix during the season is that he isn't out there necessarily to help himself. He had over 100 assists to 3 different teammates. No one else in the NBA could say that this year. He makes that whole team better. So subtracting him from the lineup, it's not like you're losing a tremendous scoring threat. Obviously, he did just score those 37 points. But he's, you expect, 14, 15 points out of him. It's those 9, 10, 11 assists per game that he gives you, especially to this young team with Booker and Bridges and Ayton being your 3 leading scorers. His presence alone, you mentioned it, Akshay, he can be a vocal leader on the sidelines, but having the knowledge and experience that those guys do not while actually on the court, that's what's going to hurt Phoenix the most.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll go ahead and move on to the other side of the bracket in the Eastern Conference. Like I mentioned earlier before, Nets and Bucks, Game 5, Kevin Durant put on a show for the ages. That was crazy. Jaya, what do you think about this performance?
I mean, I think I can only say what everybody else has to say. It was incredible. I mean, I think anyone who still doubts KD after that legendary performance is just insane, if you ask me. And, that triple-double was perfect. And he broke a history record with all of those high numbers in all 3 categories. So I think he really pulled it out of him. And I predicted that he was going to be able to do that for Game 5. Obviously, it did help that Harden was at the last minute decided to come and play. I think that was a very good distraction for the Bucks because they weren't quite sure what to do with him. And then that created more opportunities for Durant to be able to do what he needed to do. But yeah, that was a great game. A great game.
Grant, what do you think about that performance?
Yeah, when I was just in awe, I tweeted right after it finished, I'm in awe of what I've just witnessed in Brooklyn. That is one of the best playoff games that I've ever seen. I'm 23 years old, and I was trying to recall the greatest performances that I can remember watching live. And I boil it down to LeBron's 45 and 15 against the Boston Celtics, and also LeBron when he scored 25 straight to close out Detroit in the Palace. And this was incredible. Kevin Durant became the first player in NBA history to score over 45 points, 15 rebounds, and 10 assists in a single game. Obviously finished with 49, 17, and 10. Made 4 threes, shot 16 of 23 from the field. Did it without Kyrie Irving and, James Harden coming back. Jaya mentioned it. Sure, he could have been a distraction somewhat to the defense, but James Harden had 5 points. James Harden was 1 for 10 and 0 of 8 on threes. That was not James Harden like we know it. That was not the James Harden that was putting up 28, 9, and 9 on a nightly basis. Kevin Durant last night, LeBron James is out of the playoffs early. This is his real chance to say, there have been, back and forth, is Kevin Durant the best player? Is LeBron the best player? This is his chance to say that I am the best player in the National Basketball Association. And he was down. Giannis and the Bucks had all the momentum, and they threw it away. Durant grabbed it with one of the greatest performances in NBA history.
And Giannis would have agreed with him. Giannis went out and said that he thinks KD is the best player in the world right now. But the thing with Harden, because I know a lot of people have been giving Harden a lot of crud just for only scoring 5 points. But honestly, I think that's completely fine. I think everybody knew that he wasn't going to be completely 100%. He still had great assists, and I think he really did what the team needed him to do. And the fact that he played 46 minutes without another injury is great. Hopefully he'll be, he just needs to make those adjustments and get back in shape. And I think he will do a lot better in the next game should he play. But I think just his presence, just having him there, having another star player on the court, it makes it a little bit more intimidating, and it does distract the Bucks because I think the Bucks were like, how do we guard him? We don't know what to do, and it just takes a little bit of the pressure off of everyone else, him being there. And I think that was the intention the whole time, rather than, Harden's about to, go crazy and get us a bunch of points, even though that is what we would usually expect from him.
Well, I have a bone to pick with the Bucks organization, actually, and Giannis in particular. Don't come to the post-game press conference and say, Kevin Durant is the best player in the world. When he shoots it, I hope he misses. You just won Defensive Player of the Year. You are a 2-time MVP. You are the only unanimous first-team All-NBA selection. You're going to make the All-Defensive team. Go over there and guard him. Don't say that you're doing what the coach told you to do. Don't say Mike Budenholzer calls the scheme and I listen to what he says. You take your 6'11" butt over there. You match up with him. You have the lead. You have a double-digit lead in the second half. You are known for choking in the postseason. People say you can't perform if it's not the regular season. And what do? When he is down he's playing with James Harden on one leg at 300 pounds. I don't even know how fat Harden is these days. And Kyrie Irving isn't playing. And you let Kevin Durant drop the best playoff performance in the past 5, 10, 15 years on your head. The Bucks deserve to be eliminated from the playoffs just because of that alone.
No, I definitely agree. It's just you'd think they'd make adjustments mid-game when he was cooking Brook Lopez, he was cooking PJ Tucker, he was cooking Chris Middleton, even had Pat Connaughton on him. At what point are you Giannis and you have to say to yourself, okay, maybe I should go guard him. Maybe coach is wrong here. Maybe I should step up as a defensive player of the year and actually try to stop him from winning this game and taking it away from us. I think. The Bucks really lost that game as much as Kevin Durant really won it, in my opinion. It's just, it was just really stupid basketball, like Charles Barkley said. It's just stupid basketball from the Bucks. And speaking of the Bucks and how stupid they were in Game 5, where do they go from here? What adjustments do they make in Game 6 and try to get this back to Game 7 in Brooklyn? Jaya, we'll start with you.
I think Milwaukee. They should be in better shape for Game 6 simply just because of the home court advantage already. They're going to be in better shape. And I don't know. I feel like they know that they made a lot of the things that they did, like you were all saying, is just dumb, silly decisions. And I think all they have to do is play smarter this time. If they play smart basketball, they should be able to win this game. I mean, they're at home and they've won before, so I think they can do it. They just can't do what they did last night for sure. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Akshay, you want to know where the Bucks go from here? They go home. This is it for them. Yeah, James Harden, right? Giannis is bringing the ball down in the fourth quarter, and he's setting up at the top of the perimeter. Brooklyn runs over to double team him, and James Harden waves him off. James Harden has one leg. He's not a good defender. He's not the most athletically gifted. Obviously, his skill is amazing, but from pure athleticism, you take Giannis 100 times out of 100. What does Giannis do? He backs him down and shoots a fadeaway, which I can go to the gym and make more fadeaways than Giannis does. And I'm not saying that just because everyone says that. I can do it. If you put me on a court with Giannis, I will make more fadeaways than he will. So Milwaukee, they're a mess. They have displayed no killer will in this series. There seems to be no instinct of wanting to win the game. Even the first game they won, Game 3, which brought things back to a quote-unquote manageable 2-1, they won 87-84. That's not an impressive game. Sure, Giannis and Middleton combined to score the most points a duo has ever done in a playoff game. It was around 80%. They put up their usual 30 points per game, but it doesn't matter if you're not doing things that you need to do in the high leverage moments. And I have seen nothing from Milwaukee to prove to me that they can do that. So even if they go in and win Game 6 by virtue of the Brooklyn Nets basically being Durant or bust, I'm still taking the Nets to win the series.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, in my opinion, you have to have your best player being able to close out games for you, being able to get on the line and knock down free throws in crunch time. And Giannis is not that guy. He unless he fixes that awful jump shot he has and takes less than 10 seconds to shoot a free throw, he's not that guy. And the fact that Mike Budenholzer is creating these plays for Giannis down the stretch, it's setting them up for failure, in my opinion, because they're going to put him on the line. He's going to miss the free throws. They're missing out on free points. And you have Chris Middleton, you have Drew Holiday. That's why you have them there, so that they can, also supplement points instead of Giannis as well. And they're also very good free throw shooters, but you're not drawing up plays to get them the ball in crunch time. And if they don't make adjustments, they're just going to keep letting Giannis shoot And that's not what you need. You need somebody else to pick it up unless Giannis can actually start shooting free throws. But that obviously isn't going to happen this series. It has to work on in the offseason. And it might even take a while and longer than the offseason to fix that because his jump shot is just broken right now. And you can't say that, oh, because he's 7 foot, he can't shoot. I mean, Kevin Durant's 7 foot, he can shoot fine. It doesn't matter. You need to fix that jump shot. And if the Bucks don't take advantage of the other players they have down in crunch time, I think the series is over, even in Game 6, in my opinion. I don't think that they can stop Kevin Durant, obviously. I think other people – I think Joe Harris actually might step up this time and not miss like 5 threes in a row. I think Bruce Brown will actually have a good game. And I think Harden, as limited as he is, will, obviously provide that playmaking that the Nets need and, not chuck up like 8 step-back threes and miss all of them, in my opinion. So – That's where I think the Bucks go from here. Do you guys have any last-minute comments on the Bucks series before we move on to the other Eastern Conference series?
Yeah, I just agree with that. I think that obviously as a star player, Giannis is going to get the ball a lot, but they need to learn how to play on his strengths. He's a defensive player. He's an amazing defensive player, and they need to stop making him try to do things that he's just not going to succeed in. They're not, like you said, they're not setting themselves up for success, and they're not setting themselves up in a position to win that game. So they really just need to figure out what are our players' strengths and how can we use that to win the game.
I don't want to sound blasphemous here, but if I'm Mike Budenholzer, I'm putting the ball in Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday's hands at the end of the game. We know Giannis can't do it. If it's not a layup or a dunk or, he's having a rare hot streak from 3, very, very rare, might I add, he's probably not going to deliver. And, if he doesn't get the chance because he gets fouled, we don't even know if he's going to shoot the ball, much less make it. So it was Drew Holiday who hit that spinning layup in transition to put them up, 87-84 in Game 3. It was Drew Holiday who made that shot. Chris Middleton is 6 for 9 on game time and go-ahead field goals in his career. That's better than Jordan, Kobe, LeBron, Durant. I'm not saying he's a better player. It's a very small sample size. But so far, he has proven that he is the best in those situations. If you're heading down the stretch here, I don't care how cold Middleton can get. If there's a minute left and it's a tie game, stop giving it to Giannis and clear it out and say, go to work. The Nets are just walling up and forcing him into doing something stupid. So if the Bucks need to get back in this series, they need to evaluate their approach down at the end of the game.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just at what point do you look at yourself? Do you look at your team and you say, okay, this is clearly not working. It hasn't been working for the past 2 or 3 seasons. Do we make adjustments here and do we bring in other pieces? Obviously, they brought in the pieces and stuff, but they just need to make the adjustment and actually change their game plan. I think that in my opinion, this game shouldn't have been close to begin with. Kevin Durant dropped 49 points and went off in the second half, but the Bucks should have had like a 25-point lead at the end of the first half. Brook Lopez was trying to shoot threes instead of, attacking the basket where there was nobody, size capability to guard him down there. So in my opinion, I think the Bucks lost this game, more than Kevin Durant really wanted it. So, I mean, they have to make adjustments. Otherwise, as Grant said, they're going home in Game 6. And, that series, their season is over. And, speaking of another Game 5, we have the Hawks and Sixers tonight. Jaya, the Sixers lost 2 straight, very close games in Atlanta, going back home to Philadelphia. Do you think that they'll win tonight, or do you think that the Hawks will steal another one?
I think that the Hawks might be able to take another one, honestly. I think that they've shown, like, Trae Young had an amazing game last game. I think if he continues to do that, he's an IQ player and has a great dynamic, and I think that he'll continue to find opportunities against the Sixers. So I'm not completely confident when I say that, but I do, if I were to say right now, I think I would honestly go with the Hawks. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege of doing a few shows with Jaya so far, and if there's one thing she's convinced me of, it's that Trae Young is legit. And I was a huge Trae Young fan in high school, coming out of Norman, or excuse me, coming out of his prep school. Went to Norman to play for Oklahoma. Had a very good college career. People criticized him because he wasn't efficient in the latter half of the season. Even though teams were triple teaming him, people still expected him to shoot 70% from the field. He still led the NCAA in points and assists. And in these playoffs, he has been nothing short of amazing. He's averaging 28.3 points and just under 11 assists in his third year and his first time in the playoffs. He got rid of the higher seeded Knicks in 5 games, and he's 3-2 on the road. Took game 1 in Philadelphia. Obviously, the Hawks got game 4 in Atlanta to tie it 2-2. I'm with Jaya. I like the Hawks on the road here, especially with Danny Green being out to the strained calf and Joel Embiid having that partially torn meniscus. We know he played through it in game 3, and he still put up 27 points. Game 4, he did not look anything like what we expected him to. He shot 4 for 20 from the field, 20% obviously. He went to the locker room in the first half to get treatment on his knee during the game. If Embiid might score in the 20s again tonight, but the heart, the belief, the swagger that the 76ers came in with, they with Doc Rivers as the new head coach, it was a new era in Philadelphia. Now they're getting punked by a 5'8" point guard. So I'm taking the Hawks here, and then I think they close it out in the 6 back in Atlanta.
I'm gonna counteract that. I think that the Sixers are gonna take Game 5 tonight. I think Joel Embiid obviously didn't play great in Game 4. I don't think anybody played great in Game 4 for the Sixers. Doc Rivers said in a post game interview that a lot of them were trying to play hero ball, and obviously that's not going to work in the playoffs. We've seen it all, unless you're Kevin Durant or something like that. But even then, he had like 10 assists, so it wasn't really hero ball. He was just playing great. In my opinion, I think the 76ers are trying to do way too much in Game 4. I think they understand that. I think they know what they have to do. They know what they have to do to win. They've done it at home before, and I think that this home crowd is really going to give them a boost in tonight. And so we've got that other Game 5 as well. Obviously, with Kawhi Leonard out, and we were talking about this earlier, the Clippers and Jazz tonight. Obviously, Kawhi is out. Donovan Mitchell still a little bit banged up. Mike Conley's not playing. I mean, who takes this pivotal Game 5? Grant, we'll go with you.
Yeah, so on Parlay Power Hour with myself, Tanner Kern, and William Reed this morning, we were talking about this game. I had done my research earlier in the morning and saw that the Jazz were 3-point favorites. Now with Kawhi out, they were 7-point favorites last I checked. That may have been bet even more. I'm not sure. I've been checked with them the past couple hours. But Kawhi being out, what do you say? That's your best offensive player. That's your best defensive player. Excuse me. That's your go-to guy in the clutch. That's your guy who's willed you this whole series. That's the guy your franchise is built around. That's your heart and soul. The Jazz are going to win. I don't see a way around it.
Yeah, I agree with Grant here. I think Kawhi is just too essential to that team that his loss is definitely, like, the lack of his presence on the court is definitely going to be felt. And there's just nothing that can really be done about that. So I think that the Jazz will win as well.
Yeah, I have to agree with you guys. It's unfortunate that Kawhi is one of my favorite players in the league. It's unfortunate he got injured. He is as Grant said, the heart and soul of the Clippers team. But the Jazz are playing great. I think Donovan Mitchell has I think he's averaged like 30 points in his first 6 playoff games, which is ridiculous. As Stephen A. Smith said, he's like the best player in Jazz playoff history, which is little absurd, but I mean he's playing like it right now. But unless Paul George has like a 70-point game, I just don't think that the Clippers can win this game at all tonight, especially on the road. I don't. Obviously, they were great on the road last series against the Mavericks, but they're 0-2 this series, so it's going to be difficult for them. I think that crowd will definitely help them, and I think Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are going to have great games. And with that being said, you guys have any other last minute things you want to bring up about the NBA and what to expect tonight or in the future?
Just one more thing to add to what you were saying about the Clippers on the road. Jazz were 31-5 in the regular season at home. Best road record in the NBA. Jazz get it done easy. They win in 6. Hawks win in 6.
Mm-hmm.
Bold takes. Jaya, what about you? Anything else?
Well, I've said it once and I'll say it again. I think Donovan Mitchell is definitely one of the best players in the playoffs for sure. You know, he has the 3rd highest career average scoring in the playoffs. He knows how to get it done. And I think it's always just been easy for him. And I think this won't be any different. So I'm excited to watch him tonight.
Yeah, we've got 2 great games tonight. Game 5. Really looking forward to both of them. Got great playoffs for the rest of the season. Really exciting, although with the injuries, it's going to be a little bit disappointing for a majority of the fan bases. But we've got NBA basketball. It's great. Fans are back. Really looking forward to it. I'm Akshay Kumbar. With me is Grant Mitchell and Jaya Williams. Thank you for tuning into the Sports 2.0 Network. Please subscribe, and we'll see you soon.